We'll do a roll call. Excuse me. Commissioner Lee?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Both Commissioners Ambrose and Gray are excused due to conflicts. Agenda item number 2, public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda. Excuse me.
Oh, well, excuse me. Well, thank you, Ethics Commissioners and staff of our city. My name is Ellen Lee Zhao. I am a public services worker. I am a union delegate for government employees. I am also the Director of Public Relations for the California Civic Grand Jury Association, the San Francisco chapter. I have been coming to the Ethics Commissions with the government employees in different days, different times, in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. The last time I was here was on January 16, 2020. I came to you report different issues about possible government corruption and election fraud. As you remember, I was one of the 8 candidates for San Francisco mayor in the June 2018 election. I was not allowed to join many of the forums, debates, and events in many public places, like City Hall, like public library, like public parks. I was also one of the 6 candidates for San Francisco mayor for the November 2019 election. I was bullied by many of the Democratic leaders and electoral officials that many of them condemned me, my billboard, and many of my billboard was illegally removed, and many of my posters was illegally removed, and publicly calling me racist. Because I talk about clean up City Hall, fighting against San Francisco City Hall corruption. I am a conservative Republican. I care about my city, and I am coming to you and ask you for your intervention to stop possible corruptions within the electoral officials. I've talked to you about election fraud for San Francisco election record. 2018, 2019, we have so many people, more than 119 years old, more than 659 of them, they are still in the voters' roll, and many of them voted, even they are 151 years old, 150 years old, 136 years old. I am here today to ask you, if the city has more than $12 billion, we should not have anyone sleeping on the street, dying on the street, overdose on the street. Our government itself has many problems because we only have one party, Democratic Party, and we have so many homeless people are suffering, dying because of the corruption that we are facing. Ethics Commission is a department that was set up to stop corruption. And I hope you stand up and do your job and able to do something about what I'm reporting to you. And I'm here to request you to restore law and order to protect all of the people in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for public information, here you go. Thank you.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. Just so we have the record straight, Chair Dana Chu protects the office of the Assessor Recorder. Vice Chair Noreen Ambrose, who we don't see today, protects the office of the City Attorney. Commissioner Yvonne Lee protects the office of the Mayor. Commissioner Fern M. Smith protects the office of the District Attorney. And Commissioner Lateef Gray, who is not here either, protects the Board of Supervisors, because that's what this commission is all about, is protecting the elected and appointed officials of this city against its citizens. At the last commission meeting, we experienced the reality that this commission has never and will never act to enforce the Sunshine Ordinance. And that is the biggest show of hypocrisy and dishonesty that I know, because for 10 years you sent people to bargain with the Sunshine Task Force about coming up with a procedure to enforce that ordinance. and it was all done in purely bad faith. You had no intention and have no intention of ever enforcing that ordinance. The protection of the rights of the citizens of San Francisco to attend public meetings and participating in those proceedings is the furthest thing from your minds. All you have to do is look around this room and see what you're starting earlier in the day does. Nobody shows up. In fact, at the last meeting, someone actually pushed the panic button and 3 armed sheriff's deputies showed up at my back. Aren't you proud of yourself? Need 3 deputies to protect yourself from the things I have to say. Thus begins the usual pattern of hostile behaviors exhibited when they don't like what a member of the public has to say. I have spent the last 10 years fighting to ensure that what I had to say at public meetings actually made it into the official record, which are the minutes. And last week, you made it certain that they wouldn't make it into the Board of Supervisors minutes. And I'll tell you one thing about that hearing, it was so dishonest, because all that has ever had to happen to prevent the 150-word summaries from appearing in the body of the minutes is for the city attorney to issue a legal opinion rather than the BS he puts in the Good Government Guide, which is not the law, and it would have resolved the issue permanently. But I thank you for proving that as far as the Sunshine Ordinance goes, you are a dishonest body.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Agenda item number 3, draft minutes for the Ethics Commission's January 17, 2020 regular meeting.
Thank you. Chair Chu, we were unable to complete the minutes for this meeting and have them posted in time, so regrettably we will have them at the next meeting, but we don't have them today, so I apologize for that inconvenience.
Take that up. The January meeting minutes will be taken up then next month. Agenda item number 4, discussion and possible action on Ethics Commission annual budget submission to the Mayor's Office for fiscal year 2021.
Thank you, Chair Chu. In the packets that we distributed for the Commission's meeting today was an agenda item 4. That was an overview of our anticipated budget submission. As you know, those are due today to the Mayor's Office, and we have just submitted it prior to coming to this meeting, to the Controller's Office as well, and to all the parties that need to have those. We do have for you and on the public's table the Commission's transmittal to the Mayor that we just submitted today. So I'm using that as a reference point. There is much overlap between the 2 documents from the Commission's meeting agenda last week, but this is actually the more complete picture of what the Commission's proposal is. And so I just wanted to walk through a bit of process first and then get to the substance of our proposal and then answer any questions that you might have or members of the public might have. I will also say that we are, as we speak, are working to post our transmittal on our own website, on our budget page. Thank you. It has been posted. And if you click on the Commission's tab on our home site, you can get to the budget page from there. And at the top of the list at the bottom of the page will be the transmittal for our fiscal year 21 budget proposal, that we're submitting today, that we have submitted. As you may recall from the memo that we provided to you in your agenda packets, the Commission has taken a look at what we think is essential to request for our core operational services and our core programmatic mandates. Against a backdrop of, again, a mayor's budget instructions to all departments this year, that given the potential climate that we see ahead, the mayor's office has asked all departments to submit budget requests that conform with a 3.5% cut from current fiscal year levels for fiscal year 21 to a 7% cut total for fiscal year 22. Much of my comments are focused on fiscal year 21 because in practice for our department, it is a year-to-year process of requesting and securing funds. So the focus for our discussion is our request for fiscal year 21. In order for a department to submit its request to the mayor's office for its annual budget request today, The system that we enter our proposal into requires a number of documents, but it also requires that the budget we submit reflect the absorption of those cuts. So the documents that we submitted today had to go through an exercise and look at where the commission, if those cuts were to be imposed, where would they have to be absorbed by the commission given our current funding levels? And I'll talk about that briefly as we go through the memo. Separate from that, departments are also able to submit transmittals, other information that discusses the impact of those cuts, but that also discusses what the departments believe they need to do the missions and the mandates that they have been vested with authority and responsibility to do. And we've done that. As we have in recent years, we have submitted a transmittal to the mayor's office that explains it with as much detail as we can provide at the deadline of submitting our budgets, what our request is and why we believe it is significant and what is the impact of not being able to secure the funds that we need to do the job that we have. So with that backdrop, let me just take a moment to explain some of the items that we have and the basis for the items that we are requesting in our budget. And I'll be working through our February 21st submission. And again, there are copies on the table for the public and online for those who might be viewing this meeting live. Since the original discussion before this commission last month, there have been a number of recent troubling developments, as you know, with the arrest of a former public works director, Mr. Nuru. This follows on the heels of, within 18 months, the resignation of the city's public health director under allegations and concerns of conflicts of interest. Again, these are allegations. We are assuming that everybody is innocent of these allegations and the charges until and unless they're proven otherwise in a court. But what the 75-page detailed charging document did show were troubling allegations of concerning approaches and actions that city officials may have taken or alleged to have taken. I think it's true that for most departments, everybody is taking a good second look at how do these kinds of things happen, what do we need to do to reinforce the city's practices and policies and procedures and culture to make sure that these kinds of headlines stop and that we don't continue to face a crisis of public confidence because of a concern that we do not have a strong culture of ethics in the city and county of San Francisco. We know that there are ongoing investigations, again, the reports publicly of the city attorney's office, the controller's office doing an audit, and that's important work to continue. One of the things that we took a very close look at in our budget request is recognizing that there is an ongoing cost and a continuing cost both into public confidence and to the taxpayers' pocketbooks. The longer we wait to really reach out and provide the support that we believe city departments and city officials need and can benefit from to help them support navigating ethically through the decisions and the kinds of issues that they face. And so our budget request takes a very aggressive and clear-headed look at how we propose to do that at the Ethics Commission. It comes with a price tag. We think that it is a sound investment, particularly considering the costs that come from having to pick up the pieces of a broken confidence in city government. So we do have a specific proposal for what we're proposing as an Ethics at Work initiative. That would be a 3-year limited term process to advance, working very closely with city departments, develop tools, relevant materials, useful resources for them to really put together a team that can go out and support cities, city officials, city leaders at all levels. Some of the things that we're looking at that we've proposed in this would be, for example, to make sure that there is an ethics component in every new employee orientation so that from the minute somebody walks in the door, they know that there's expectations for all of us about how we do our business together. And including that in the regular ongoing employee orientation is something that we think is a starting point and a first step. Another step is to support city supervisors. Many supervisors, as they sort of move up the ranks, have the opportunity to take what's known as a 24-plus supervisory training session. It's over a series of weeks, and it really helps people focus on what's expected of you as a city supervisor. Currently, as we understand it, we've had some of our staff go through that, but there's not a specific component in that related to standards of ethical conduct and how to navigate ethically through decisions and difficult decisions. We think that would be a benefit. We also know that the city has a training with new municipal executives. We, again, have sent some of our staff to that over the years. That's another opportunity as people have more significant leadership roles throughout the city, building a component there. Again, leveraging existing opportunities in the city to really implement a stronger and better and more effective focus across the board and a more seamless focus across the board is something that we think is valuable. And beyond that, also just working with departments to really come up with tools that they will find most useful as they assess, and as we would work with them to assess where the ethics hotspots are, whether it's related to statements of incompatible activities to help their employees understand where activities might be in conflict or inimical to their duties and therefore restricted or addressed somehow. There are a number of existing touch points where we believe that if we and the city were able to marshal the resources over a limited 3-year term period, put together a project that helps partner with departments with existing opportunities to reach out to their workforce, to their leadership, to people in the community that they work with to help reinforce public confidence, this would go a long way towards really reinforcing a culture where ethics is front and center and people feel equipped to have the tools to make practical choices, to make the right decisions. So this is something that is prominent since the last discussion that we've had before the Commission. It's included in our overall budget request. That proposes a team of 4 individuals that would come into the work effective July 1st, start laying the groundwork and the infrastructure at this point. We don't think we can wait through the city's hiring process to wait a year or 2 to start this. We think it's something that could be accomplished now, so we want to engage in further conversations with how that can be accomplished through limited term positions that are exempt positions that we can start the fiscal year hitting the ground running. It would be a 3-year limited term project because at the end of 3 years, we'd have a chance to assess against identified performance metrics whether and how this is making a difference and retooling it at that time to launch it for the long term. But to really assess what it is that we've accomplished, what has improved, and then retool and reestablish a program at that time. So it's designed in that way to be a 3-year project.
Pardon me, Director Baum.
Yes.
So
Excuse me.
that was one of my questions, which is the additional resources, but for 3 years, it would function more as a pilot. And then at the end of 3 years, you'll have criteria against which you can measure the success of the programs and tools that were launched. And then we would then go back to City Hall for an additional funding for a more permanent staffing solution, and as well as ongoing support for tools and policies and procedure work.
Yes, that's what we're envisioning, and recognizing that, I think one of our core mandates under the charter is to establish an educational program to have seminars and assist city officials throughout city government in supporting a culture of ethics and understanding the rules of the road. And we do that. We know the city attorney's office plays a tremendous role in doing that as well. I think our focus here is to try and make it tangible and practical application of those rules on a day-to-day basis. And so we think that there's a need to do that has been unmet. Historically, the Ethics Commission has not had a large or dedicated outreach team of any sort, to my knowledge. I do understand that there had been, at a time, I think in the mid-2000s, where there might have been a department that had experienced some issues or some conflicts or issues in their operations. And following that, there was one person hired at the Ethics Commission to do that. So we'll look into sort of, the mechanics of that. But my point is that it's just, I think headlines like the ones that we've seen are extremely troubling, but it's also that opportunity to say we have to do something different. We can't wait. There are opportunities and there are needs, and I believe there are resources. We but we have to demonstrate that they are effective and that they are targeted and that they are going to make a difference and that they meet needs that are out there. So that's what this project is designed to do. And we will be talking with the Human Resources Department on Monday, starting to explore some of this further. But that's something that, again, I wanted to highlight front and center because it is different and it adds a certain amount to our budget. Our current fiscal year budget is $4.5 million roughly. With the ongoing needs that we've identified in our February 14th memo, in addition to these, the Commission's fiscal year budget for FY21 would be approximately $6.2 million. It would be a significant bump in the first 3 years. We would evaluate again after that point what the program would look like going forward, whether the program needs to go forward at that point. The other thing that I would highlight as a new item that is that we believe warrants serious consideration in these budget discussions is that we believe that to ensure the Commission has a strong operational foundation, we believe it's time to initiate serious discussions about whether and how we might structure a different funding model or an additional funding model for the Commission. As you know, our funds come from the general fund. We also know that there are some departments that charge departments for their services, the human resources or technology or real estate. I don't think that that's quite what we're looking at when we think about creating a citywide integrity fund, but exploring how we might tap existing resources that perhaps speak to investigative work or communications or outreach to really take a hard look at where those functions support employees and city officials in doing good work and understanding the rules that guide our expectations as public servants, and where can we consolidate that to provide a more stable and longer-term funding source for the Ethics Commission from year to year. Everything from our technology resources that can't be implemented on a dime and take long years of planning, like some capital projects, to be effective. We need to rethink what the funding model might be for the Ethics Commission to supplement the work that we're required to do. Because as you know from your experience and you know from reading the Charter, our mandate is a broad one. We have not been ever sufficiently resourced to achieve that mandate, and there are costs to continuing to delay our ability to do our job.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I also think that certainly since I've been on the Commission every year, City Hall has asked us to reduce our budget, whether by 1%, 3%, 7% over time, and that if we never are able to staff to the minimum capacity that we are able to get approved through the City Hall process, it will be a constant game of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So I would absolutely be in support of exploring a new funding model. And is it the idea that a portion of the city's budget, the Commission's budget, would come from the citywide integrity fund that would be permanent, so that either it's 100% or 80% of it would go to support these ongoing, really critical initiatives that will help develop a culture, practices, and procedures of integrity, transparency, and ethics in the city, and that other parts may be a little more variable?
I think that's one of the questions we have to explore with the Mayor's office and the Controller's office and the Board of Supervisors, is really looking at, I know that the city has been creative and effective in establishing ways to support a number of programs that are desperately needed in the city. We know that there are a lot of needs out there that the city has to fulfill, so we don't take this conversation lightly, and we don't pretend to know what all the approaches could be at this point. We don't have budget expertise on our staff with years of experience to help us guide us at this point, but that's why we want to reach out, because we know that there are those models out there, and I think that with a commitment to making sure that we can prevent corruption in all its forms before it takes root, that's really what we're hoping to accomplish. And we know there is wide support and commitment in the city to doing that. So that shared commitment, we're looking for it to become a shared sharing the cost and sharing the burden and making sure it can happen, more so than we have been able to in the past as a commission.
Well, I think that we should move full speed ahead with those discussions, and if you are able to report back next month on the progress on those talks, that would be great.
We will. I think the rest of the budget is, I can take the time to walk through it if you would like. The positions that we have asked for are identified specifically in terms of a new position that would be dedicated to human resources and budget and finance, those operational issues that the commission has not had. And we know that the work as a city agency requires us to do that work. It's important work to be done, and it's important work to be done well. You'll see, you know that from our hiring has not kept pace with the needs that we have because the process is both long and we don't have the expertise and the resources and the time available in-house to make that happen more quickly. So that's something that we know we have to be focused on as well, getting those positions filled, having the resources and the expertise in-house to work through that process and get our positions filled. We also have identified other critical needs in terms of our information systems work. Absent funding for these positions, many of the projects will stop or be significantly stalled. And the bottom line, I think, as we have looked through our budget requests with a hard eye, focused on impact, we know that fundamentally it creates problems for us operationally, but the real impact is to the public and people who are trying to understand the rules and comply with them. And so during our discussions going forward with the mayor's office and the board of supervisors, we really want to help clarify and share that understanding about what we hear and what we know about how our programs will be impacting stakeholders who are trying to comply with complex laws, and also impacts that this will have to the public and their ability to have information about how government is working so that they can exercise their ability to hold us all accountable. Let me just pause there and see if there's anything else that we... Yes. Let me draw your attention, if I could, to the last section of the transmittal letter that's dated the 21st. And this is the section where in our communication with the mayor's office, we identify what the targeted cuts that would require if they were imposed on us. And for example, this fiscal year, for FY21, starting in July, the expected targeted cut for the Ethics Commission totals $161,000, and which is the 3.5%. As I mentioned, in order to submit a budget, we had to identify how we would absorb that if we had to. And as a small department, we're 87% salaries and fringe because the bulk of our work is done by people, not machinery. But we have a very, very low overhead. We're 87% staffing. So when we look at where we would have to cut in order to achieve the targets that have been established for us, that would require us to absorb those cuts in our personnel and salaries, personnel services account. What that would mean, because the directions, again, from the mayor's budget office are to focus on delivering these cuts in a way that prioritizes core functions and minimizes service impacts, but that avoids layoffs. It directs our attention to those places where we would have to avoid layoffs. So the targeted impacts for us would translate to the elimination of the principal program manager for audits, which is the position that we were able to fill, but we've seen some attrition in and has remained vacant since mid-2019. That is a program that would have an impact particularly on, obviously, our campaign committee audits, our lobbying audit program, and public financing certification reviews. The audit program, as you know, is required to do mandatory audits of all candidates and committees that receive public financing in their campaigns. And we have statutorily required deadlines or initiation dates by when those audits need to happen. We have a mandatory or statutory requirement to do a lobbying audit program, randomly select an audit of a lobbyist once per year. We are non-compliant with that requirement, and we have been non-compliant for a number of years. And this is something that having this position was designed to help us with, to both make sure that we have established a lobbying audit program that's effective, up and running, and makes sense, and that we have also had the strategic day-to-day management and oversight of our audit program to really strengthen how we do audits, to improve the timeliness of our audits, to decrease the complexity of our audits where we can, and to produce timely and effective reports that account for how committees did in complying with the law following an election. Some of that work was started, but we've been unable to proceed with it because the position's not been filled. The inability to fill this position and the elimination of this position will basically mean that the audit program will have to be in a static mode. We will compromise and not be able to move forward with a lot of the identified changes that we have on the horizon. And bottom line, again, inconvenient to us, but more importantly, candidates who are being drawn into city campaigns who choose to participate in the city's public financing program, audits can be delayed. The oversight of the money that's provided to committees for their campaigns and the compliance checks on that would be delayed. And that clearly compromises the integrity of that program and the integrity of our work in that area. But it also has a meaningful change problem for committees where they would have to potentially stay open later than they would otherwise while we finish audits. And that if they've closed a committee, they would have to reopen it. So it creates a lot of complexity and uncertainty and therefore cost for folks who want to engage in political campaigns in the city. We find that very problematic. The last thing I would say is the public financing certification. As you know from previous discussions, and you'll hear later shortly from our team, the public financing review process for candidate eligibility and disbursement of funds is housed in our audit program. So that's another ball that is juggled by that team. We have a program of public financing that has now just been revamped to expand hopefully its attraction to a larger group of candidates. We're likely potentially to see more candidates who are first-time candidates coming in to the program. That's happening at the same time we don't have the position or wouldn't have this position to exercise, again, administrative oversight, day-to-day strategic leadership on that program to make sure we're operationalizing those changes effectively, consistently, and timely for folks who are in that process. So we see a number of risks in that area as well, which we think are extremely problematic. The second position that's noted that we've identified as impacted by this would be the policy analyst position. And, excuse me one moment. This is a position that I think you're very familiar with. It is a position that we had filled again earlier this year and then had attrition, so again, has also remained vacant because we've been unable to fill it due to bandwidth and resource availability. This position is one that clearly provides critical support to this commission, to the public in evaluating, analyzing not just new laws and emerging issues, but that is responsible for helping to assess the effectiveness of existing laws. And so when we know that there are gaps in the laws or holes or places where we are unable to enforce the law because the dots don't connect, those are the kinds of things that a policy analyst helps us understand and helps make recommendations on how to close those gaps and how to strengthen the laws so that they are sensible, they are workable, and they are enforceable. This position is also one that does provide advice on the most complex of issues that come before us. And so not having that position filled with all of the work that it would do in terms of analyzing policy, helping to support the implementation of policy by contributing subject matter expertise to the work that we all do to get programs up and running once they've been passed into law. That is an area that would essentially compromise the Commission's ability to do its job as a policymaking body with an independent voice effectively, and we're concerned about that. We would have to relook at what of those priorities have to continue to be made, to be pursued. That would result in having to take new projects onto our existing 1823 or senior policy council and legislative council's plate and remove others. You can see the sort of ripple effect that it has when the two positions we've created in a policy unit, a dedicated policy unit in just the past several years, will now be permanently undercut by 50%. So that's something that will slow considerably this commission's ability to pursue effective change in the laws that we have so that they are stronger, more workable, and effective. I think I'll pause there. This is a lot of information. Our memo that we have submitted to the mayor's office runs 17 pages. There is a lot of detail there, and I appreciate that it can be difficult to wade through, but we wanted to make sure that we could be as clear as possible in our submission about the need that exists in our judgment and the impacts that not funding the commission's essential capacity needs and things like a new Ethics at Work initiative, what the continuing cost will be in terms of an impact on the city, because as we know, the commission's reach is broader than the 23 full-time equivalencies that we have. We reach an entire city of over 30,000 employees and beyond, with people who are contributing to, engaged in campaigns and lobbying activities. So we do have quite a full plate ahead of us, still ahead of us, and we have a significant but serious proposal for the work that we think we need to do and the work that we think should be funded at the commission. So I welcome any questions. We welcome the commission's continuing engagement and support in this process. It will be critical to continue conversations going forward. As Gayatri reminded me yesterday, today's deadline is actually just the beginning of the budget process, and the budget work, the real work, starts today. So we look forward to your help in that. And I just want to acknowledge our Deputy Director and Chief Programs Officer, who, in addition to all the other things that she does, she wears the hat as our Chief Budget Officer, and she wears it extremely well. So I want to thank you and acknowledge her for that. It's not an easy process, but let me stop there and see if there are any questions or other information that we can provide to you at this point.
Any questions? I have a few, but Commissioner Lee or Commissioner Smith? So just on a process standpoint, now that the budget submission is in, what happens next? Because I know that the budget will be approved for a July 1 fiscal year, but given the current headlines, as well as the ongoing city attorney and district attorney investigations, I feel like the need for additional resources and programs coming from the Ethics Commission to help create that culture of integrity and transparency is really critical, and that asking for a 3.5%, $382,000 impact cut for this upcoming year, and then aggregating to $550 in FY22 is moving in the absolutely wrong direction and is not going to help the San Francisco restore faith in the people of the city, that integrity matters, and that we collectively are trying to do a better job and have a culture of and practices and procedures where people feel safe enough to blow the whistle when they see something, they'll do something around integrity and ethics. So I guess my question is, if you could report back next month on what the reaction is from City Hall, from the budget discussions that you have, because while this is a significant increase from what our budget is currently, 4.5 million to 6.2 million, I think my one question is this enough, given the nature of the allegations that have been reported in the press? And I appreciate your point, Director Pelham, that everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but the allegations are very serious and troubling in their nature, and that the work that is needed to be done, as historically the commission has not had a large outreach staff, but we need a large outreach staff, because it's not just the elected officials and the appointed supervisors and department heads who need to know, but everyone underneath them. They need to know, if I see something, what do I do? How do I know that this is right or wrong? Who do I go to report it? And do they feel safe enough to report it? So I think all that work can be driven and supported by the Ethics Commission. And so I think you've done a great work in detailing out all of this. I guess my only question is that will this be enough? Do we need more, given the gravity of the problems that have been uncovered to date?
That's a difficult question to answer. I think the answer is we know we need more. And we know that the city also has a number of challenges that we have to practically address. This reflects our cautious but realistic take on what we could start with and what we could make a difference with if we had these resources in place. So the things like taking a look at it in the third year to see if an ethics at work program should be continued or modified, that's something that we should be willing to do, and we've identified the plan to do that in this in our initiative that we're proposing. But it is also clear that we know that with certainty what the city is investing in the Ethics Commission's work at today is not enough, and that there will be continuing significant real costs to the city continuing on if we are not more able to do the work that the voters set us up to do. And that takes resources as well. And again, as I said before, we very well know this is a shared commitment by many offices. But there is more work to be done than we've been able to do. And that will continue to play out in terms of not just bad headlines, I think, over the years, but true cost to the taxpayers, who then have other programs diverted to have to follow after the scandals have hit and the public confidence has been harmed. It takes a lot to repair that. And so this investment in more proactive work to prevent corruption in all its forms before it can take root is really something that is the Commission's core mission. And I think it's time that the Commission be able to do that work with effectiveness and with real meaning.
So I appreciate your sentiments about a shared commitment across the city around this effort to create a different kind of culture within city government. And I think that the true test, though, of that commitment is what kind of time and resources that the city collectively will put to solve the problem. And so I would very much like to await with bated breath the outcome of those discussions with the budget, but I think certainly my message to the City Hall is that if City Hall is serious about changing the culture, then I think it's really important to put the resources, absolutely critical, to put the resources into changing that culture, because it doesn't just happen. Hope is not a strategy at all, ever. Commissioner Lee.
Thank you. I echo the chair's comments. I just want to add that this commission has always been a lean and mean organization. We take on a lot of responsibilities, and it seems like every time when new initiatives are placed, then the staff has to take on new responsibilities without the corresponding resource to support that. So even when you prepare this budget, before all these things happened, it was already a very, very lean budget, already a challenge to meet all the existing and new responsibilities. And I like to think that, whether it's Form 700 and what have you, a large majority of our city family, honest people, they respect the process, and they follow the rules of law. But all it takes is just a few bad apples to erode the public's confidence in the integrity of city government. And this is the time for all of us to really look deep and see what are the areas that we really need to strengthen the oversight. And, I agree with the chair that, many of these new initiatives that you put on together is still not enough to really address the critical areas, which is not only to get people to file the necessary forms, but to remind them why these forms are important. Who's going to be reviewing them? They don't know. And then a lot of times, when we don't have when we just have the carrots and not enough of the sticks, it creates a few bad apples that can really again, add doubts to the residents of the cities, the trust in the government. So I hope that the meetings that you would be holding, people would recognize that this budget is not a pie-in-the-sky budget. It's a very realistic budget, and especially in view of what's happening and what is going to happen in the near future. We really need to have the resources necessary. I particularly like to explore what the chair has suggested earlier, which is we need to look at additional resources, even if we don't need to look at a mandatory budget cut, even if we get the everything that's necessary. There are still areas that we can really add on the resources. One particular area that I really want to explore is the particular educational outreach to city contractors and grantees. Since many of the contractors already have to pay fees when they file for permits and what have you, I'd like to know whether it's within the legal process that we should look at whether we can get a piece of those fees, because I know that certain fees are already being channeled to different departments for the work related to the contracting work and what have you, because if we need to look at additional revenues already put into the city's coffers, maybe we should really look into that. If we're going to be taking a critical role in educating and outreaching this population who needs to know about the city's ethics laws and their requirements, we should be paid from that pot of money to supplement what we already have, which is already very, very lean. So I hope that the leaders that you will be meeting within the next few weeks understand that you're not going in just to ask for more money. You're going in to ask for the necessary tools to continue what we do. And as the chair said, if we're all on the same page, making sure that we have a clean government with integrity that the public can trust, then let's support that and make sure that the Ethics Commission staff can have the tools to do the work.
I would echo Commissioner Lee's comments, and just to create perspective, the overall city budget is $12 billion, and we're here asking for $6.2 million, which is less than 1% of that. And I think that I hope that we will get this and more, and we'll have a productive and fruitful dialogue about alternative funding sources that could ensure that there will be resources there for the ethics work to continue, regardless of who sits in City Hall going forward into the future. So we look forward to updates in the coming months, and also let us know how we can help with our support in that effort.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. That's very helpful. We will make sure to convey that, and we will make sure to engage you at every opportunity. So thank you.
Call for public comment on agenda item number 4.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. This agenda item notes, quote, the public announcement of the FBI's arrest and charging of San Francisco Public Works Director Mohammed Nuru on federal corruption charges, end quote. And I assume that what he did, which was federally illegal, was also a violation of state law and probably city and county ordinances. Conspicuously absent, however, is the many mention of Mayor London Breed's potential violations, in filing her annual statements of economic interest. One involved her acceptance of a loan from Mr. Nehru, her subordinate, which is a really, really big no-no. You're a department head and you're taking a loan from somebody who works for you. That's a real shaky one. She also had apparently a float in the Pride Parade that somebody gave $12,000 and it was not put on her SEI. But innocent until proven guilty is the way you deal with it, right? I'm certain the mayor's minions have been scurrying around to clean up any other such mistakes, and I use quotes on that, before they come to the public's attention. And I will guarantee you there are more. I think former Commissioner Quentin Kopp said it best, if I get this on the screen. I don't think, and this is a quote, I don't think anyone is afraid of the Ethics Commission who is in competitive political life in San Francisco. The lobbyists have acclimated themselves to it over a period of 25 years, and so have the candidates, end quote. That's from someone who quit this commission because he was disgusted with it. The only one that was more dramatic than that was when your president quit in the middle of a meeting. He was so disgusted. So what exactly do the citizens of San Francisco get from the ethics minions at an average salary benefit package of $164,000 a year? I hear you saying the words, oh, we don't have enough resources. If I remember correctly, when the executive director took over, this body got a 30% increase over what it had under the previous ethics director. And very frankly, I don't see any difference today than it was years ago or a decade ago. You're just as ineffective now as you were then. And it's laughable, I think, that you consider the city and county of San Francisco's taxpayers should give you more money to flush down the drain.
Thank you. Other public comment? Okay. Agenda item number 5, discussion of monthly staff policy report, including presentation on new laws and resources in place for the 2020 elections following the public financing review project.
Thank you, Chair Chu and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Pat Ford, Senior Policy and Legislative Affairs Counsel. I want to devote most of my time today for this agenda item to giving you a presentation that I hope will serve as a sort of capstone on the public financing review project. So before I get to that, I think I'll just ask if you have any questions about the policy report that's attached here with agenda item 5. I think for the public financing item, the presentation will give you a lot of info about that. I mentioned Prop F litigation. There's, again, a standalone agenda item for that as well. So I won't go into detail on those here up front, but please let me know if you do have any questions about this. I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions? No? Go ahead.
Okay, great. So at this time, I'll invite Rob Hodge, who's our lead auditor, to join me, and we will give you a brief presentation about the Public Financing Review Project. And I'll start out by briefly recapping the project for you. I'll go through it pretty quickly because this will be the part that you're most familiar with. I'll just briefly summarize the ordinances and regulations that you approved as part of this project and kind of talk about the process that led to that. And then at that point, I'll transition over to Rob, and Rob will take over and give you an idea of the kind of behind-the-scenes work that went on in our office to operationalize the new laws, but also to undertake a lot of administrative improvements to the program that we hope will make it much more effective moving forward. So without further ado, I will switch over to the projector where we have some slides for you, and we'll get started.
Thank you.
So the main goals that we were trying to address in this review project were first and foremost to reduce the participant compliance burden. We believed during the 2018 election cycle, based on what we were hearing from candidates and treasurers, that candidates were having some difficulties understanding the requirements of the program and complying with them. We sought to make it as efficient as possible for qualified candidates to apply, qualify, and comply with the program rules so that they were not spending public financing funds merely on compliance, that they were minimizing their compliance costs and using those funds for what they're intended for, which is to run a campaign, communicate with voters. But secondly, we heard from stakeholders that they really wanted us to also assess whether the program is meeting its policy objectives and, where possible, to strengthen the program so that it would better meet those objectives. How we undertook this is first to identify all the issues that we could with the program, and then secondly, to identify what approaches we might take to address those issues. As I mentioned, many of the issues were brought to light during the 2018 election, just based on what we heard from candidates. As you recall, there were a number of appeals that candidates brought to the commission, and they voiced some concerns about various features of the program. So that was one of our starting points, is what we were hearing from candidates. We went beyond that, though, and we proactively sought to engage with those candidates and many other candidates and treasurers and have phone conversations or email exchanges where possible to just get a sense from them of what their experience was like and how they thought the program maybe could be better from the candidate perspective. We also worked closely with stakeholders. These would be anybody from local advocates to regional organizations to national nonprofits that are working on election-related issues. We thought that having as diverse a group of voices on this project as possible would be helpful, and I believe that it was. Many of the approaches that we ended up recommending to you came from the stakeholders themselves. We also did extensive data analysis, and we were aided largely by the EDA team and Tyler Field on that component, and you'll remember all of the charts and data that we brought to you to try to quantify what we were seeing in the program, whether the spending limits were being adjusted properly, whether the amount of funding the candidates were getting was effective, et cetera. Another important component of the project was to talk to other jurisdictions that have public financing to understand what their experience has been and to see what we might learn from them. The project was divided in 2 phases, so I'll talk about the 2 phases separately. And the 2 phases roughly aligned with the 2 goals I mentioned up front. Goal 1 being to address compliance burdens on the participants and I should say applicants generally. And then phase 2, trying to look at the more substantive aspects of the program and see where we might strengthen it to improve its outcomes. So phase 1 resulted in an ordinance and a set of regulations. The ordinance did the following 4 things that you see on this slide: changing the deadline for the statement of participation, eliminating the trust account limit and the contingency account requirement, and then the last 2 bullet points relate to how the IEC adjustment mechanism was changed. The regulations that came through phase 1 were all trying to clarify processes and requirements for candidates. So the regulations now provide much more detail about how to prove the residency of a contributor, which is part of having a contribution approved for public financing, to clarify that we will not review a qualifying request until the candidate submitting it has filed a statement of participation. That's just a necessary step in the process that we thought needed to occur in that order. We clarified the rules for refiling and resubmission of qualifying requests. Those are actually 2 separate processes that were being conflated by candidates, so we sought to create clear, separate processes there. And then we also clarified the appeals process, creating a standard for appeal and some more details about how that process works. And then in phase 2, as you remember, this was much more recently, the ordinance made several changes, but the main 4 changes were these. increasing the matching ratio from 2-to-1 to 6-to-1, no longer matching the full $500 of a contribution, but only matching up to $150, making more funds available to candidates, each candidate, and having higher initial IEC levels. So I know that was fast, but these are things that I think you've seen many, many times, so I don't want to belabor them. So we'll move now to talking about how those laws were implemented. The audit division led a process to update their practices, and I'll turn it over to Rob here in a moment. He might elaborate on that a little bit more. But also, as you know, NetFile is an integral part to the public financing program. This is the program that candidates use to file all public financing forms with our office. So anytime the laws change around public financing, we have to make changes to that program too. And the EDA team led that process. And then likewise, the forms that underlie the public financing program also has to be updated. And then all of the content on our website, compliance materials like the supplemental guides, and all of our advice has to be updated. And these are updates just to bring these items into compliance with the new laws. This is separate from what the rest of the presentation will be about, which is actually substantively improving those processes and documents to try and make them more effective. This slide is just what was involved as those new laws went into effect. What did we immediately have to do just to be in compliance with the new laws? So I'll turn it over to Rob now to talk about what we did beyond just these items.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Rob Hodge. I'm the lead auditor at the Ethics Commission. Worked very closely with Pat as well as several other divisions to take these changes that came about through the Phase 1 and Phase 2 process and actually kind of make them reality for the candidates, treasurers, and any other stakeholders. So continuing on with our presentation, one of the main things that we found coming out of the 2018 election cycle as we entered into the Phase 1 discussion and changes was that there were a lot of ways that we could improve and update our existing educational material, not just to incorporate the new changes, but also to just make information more accessible to the public, not just candidates and treasurers, but anyone that may have an interest in what it is we do with the public financing program. Our kind of first stop place for information is our website. We do have a dedicated page to public financing. It provides a lot of general facts and overviews of the program and how it works. The audit team does perform kind of a regular review several times a month. We kind of go through all pages of our website. Anything that the audit team might touch on, whether it's through audits, through public financing, we are reviewing those pages. We're always trying to find ways. Is something unclear? Can we improve the quality or the content or the clarity of the information we present on our website? Is to incorporate changes that came about from the Phase 1 updates. Those were all made back in June of 2019. We wanted to make sure those were out there because we did have that special election for Board of Supervisors November of last year. And then the Phase 2 changes were made and incorporated to our website in January of this year. And just to show, this is just an example from our website. This is the immediate landing page. If candidates go to compliance, and then on the right-hand side, the drop-down menus, they can go candidates and public financing. This page immediately pops up, provides them information on the amount of funding that they may be eligible to receive. We also have right near the top, unfortunately it's covered up by the closed captioning there, but there is a link to the supplemental guides that we create for both supervisor and mayor, and I'll touch on those in a few minutes. We also took this section, apply for public financing. Originally, this was only about 2 small paragraphs. We really wanted to expand on this. And again, as the first landing page where candidates might come, we wanted to make sure they were getting enough information to really understand what the program is about and what is involved in participating. Our second effort that we undertook was working with policy directly to update our supplemental guides for public financing. We do have 2 versions of the guide, one for Board of Supervisor and one for Mayor. These are really the primary source of information for anyone that wants to participate in the program. We go into depth and extreme detail on the specific requirements outlined by the laws, what candidates need to do before they can submit the application or the qualifying request. And if they are not approved, what do they do next? If they are approved, what are the next steps? This document initially, I believe, was about 19 to 20 pages. Based on feedback we got in 2018, phase 1, phase 2 changes. We've expanded that, and it's almost 30 pages now because we really wanted to make sure every question that we were getting from candidates, we wanted to present that information up front so that they could read it and have examples and gain an understanding of it. And again, as with the website, this is a document that we are constantly reviewing. Every election cycle, the audit team goes through. We try to see what can we improve, what can we update, how can we make it better for the public. And then the phase 2 changes that will be applicable for this year's November 2020 election, we had those published in January of this year as well ahead of when candidates could even apply. So that information is out there right now for them to be able to review. And I wanted to provide you with a few sample pages just to show you just the breadth of updates that we made. All the text that you see in orange is text that was either added or revised to either incorporate changes that came from phase 1 and phase 2, or to try to address issues and concerns that we received from candidates, treasurers, and the general public. And really, again, our goal was to try to put as much information up front as we could for the public and try to address many of the common questions we were getting before the candidates tried to attempt to participate. So, and again, this document, that is kind of our primary source. Anyone with questions, that's one of the first places we'll turn them to. Say, we'll answer your questions, but we also want to make sure you have this document saved on your own computers, or you have a copy of this form. It's available on our website, but also in our office as well. Finally, in response to a lot of comments and questions we got from the public, we felt it was very worthwhile to develop a new form of educational material, which was an actual visual presentation. We have a lot of things in writing, but we wanted to be able to have a visual presentation that someone could sit through, kind of get that information in a different approach. It was only intended to augment our existing information, and it's really, this is a very high-level overview of what you could expect. We kind of wanted to give people just a taste of, hey, there are a lot of requirements, there's a lot of expectations, so you'll need to follow through and review these resources to really understand those before you elect to participate. And again, it's only an introduction, and in no way we want to make it another burden or another requirement or prerequisite. It is something that's just offered to present the information in a different way than what we already had. And we do want to offer this in conjunction with the required candidate treasurer training that all committees, treasurers, and candidates for office have to participate in. So we'll just offer this after that course or that training is presented. And just to give you a few samples, again, looking at things from a very high-level view, we didn't want to get bogged down in too many details because we want this to be a very easily digestible presentation for the public. But we wanted to make sure they understood there are a lot of requirements. There are a lot of things that they need to do to qualify to receive public financing. And so we're really hopeful a presentation like this will allow people to understand better what they need to do before they even get their campaign going, before they even start filing their first forms or setting up a NetFile account to do any of the filings they need to do. We want to make sure they have an understanding of start to finish, what is our expectations so that candidates can qualify.
Excuse me, Rob.
Yes.
So this visual presentation, is this an in-person presentation, or is it also available on the website?
Yeah, thank you for asking. We will offer it in person. We are also going to host it on our website. So if the supplemental guide is a little too dense and too much to read through, this is sort of a very abridged version of the supplemental guide.
Yeah, so what I find very helpful about this is that if you go back a slide, there's the flow chart. a couple slides. Yeah, this is a great to give an overview of what the process, what the different steps are, because otherwise there's a lot of text to read, which is very dense.
Yes.
And you might not be able to picture in your head, like, I have to do A and then B and then C and then what happens. And if they have additional questions, they have the dense text to be able to go read line by line what's required. So I think this is the more that we can do of this, I think the better to make it more accessible to
Yes.
first-time candidates, for example, who might be seeking public financing.
Yeah, and that was really a driving factor behind this was sitting in with Gayatri and Rachel from our office when they were presenting the candidate treasurer trainings in the past election cycles. I sat in just to help field any questions that people may have about public financing, and we really found a lot of folks just kind of needed that very introductory level orientation to what might be involved with the program, but they weren't ready to bite off the whole, I need to read a 30-page manual on what I need to do. So we wanted this to be a compromise and allow people to kind of get their feet wet in what's involved.
Yeah, I think this is terrific, and the more that we can do of this, I think it can make it accessible to more people. So, onwards and upwards with this.
Any other questions that I can answer for you about any of the materials we've developed or anything that was in the presentation?
Have you gotten any feedback from?
We actually just finalized this presentation, so the supplemental guides have been out and available. We have been receiving phone calls from candidates and their treasurers just about general steps and things that they will need to do to qualify or to participate and qualify for public financing. However, this presentation, we pretty much finalized within the last week or so, so we have not had a chance to post it or give a live presentation yet, but we do have plans to do so in the near future.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear what the feedback is.
Yes, well, we're interested to hear too, because again, we want to make this as accessible to the public. We don't want it to be a daunting or scary thing that people don't want to do because they don't understand it. We want everyone to feel encouraged to at least try and get some assistance to run their campaigns.
Questions from commissioners?
Questions, but I'd just like to echo the commendation about the flow chart. It's really very, very helpful. And I think for the public, too, who wants to try to understand what this whole program is about and isn't going to run for anything, him or herself, but wants to know how the process works, it's a great tool. So
I fully agree with that, and we hope that will kind of serve dual purpose to educate candidates, treasurers, and the public at large as to the programs that we are running.
And will you have, I'm sorry, I don't recall offhand, but do you have a page in there that explains how the matching works? Because it used to be 2-to-1, but it's now 6-to-1, but it's limit up to 150, so it's,
Yes.
Okay.
So
Because that
we
can be a little conceptually hard to follow the first time
We
around.
made sure to break those sort of things out into separate slides. So there's a slide that explains the minimum amount that you have to raise and what that gets you for an initial payment, what additional matching funds mean. So we really kind of tried to put just, only one or two talking points on each slide. And we definitely highlighted how the matching funds will work both for supervisor and for mayor candidates.
Well, this is in good time before the November election, because the deadline, I think, to participate would be sometime in June, early June?
Yeah,
May?
mid-June.
Mid-June, yeah. So, well done. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
If there are no more questions, I think we'll wrap it up. I'll just mention that the 2020 election will be the first major election cycle where both phases of the project, both sets of ordinances will be in place, and all of these new materials will be in place. So I think we're looking forward to it as the first test case to see, what changes we might see. And I think sometime in early to mid calendar year 2021, we'd like to go back and take a look at what we saw. Hopefully have contact with candidates and treasurers, maybe do kind of a very abbreviated look back, not a full review again, but just some kind of look back to see what the response was, and maybe we'll find that there are some additional tweaks around the margins on the materials that we could make. But we really see this as kind of the culmination of the project. This is an 18-month process that started back in July of 2018. and that now all of the deliverables are pretty much in place, and now we're in kind of wait-and-see mode, and looking forward to see what happens. So,
Wise. And can you remind us, Pat, what races are upcoming in the November 2020 election?
so the races that are eligible for public financing are all of the odd-numbered Board of Supervisors seats. So there's 6 of those. And I believe there are 2 open seats now, which historically can generate more public financing. Not always the case. Sometimes there's none. Sometimes the races with an incumbent have more. Hard to say, but it's possible we could see some high activity with public financing this year.
I think that the new materials are going to be very helpful, and we'll look forward to getting feedback from the people who are actually getting the information from them. So look forward to that in 2021.
Yep, we'll look forward to it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Public comment on agenda item number 5.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. This agenda item includes another case of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Your answer to every single thing that happens in this city is rewrite the rules. And you haven't quite caught on to the fact that the people who don't follow the rules you had in the past aren't going to follow the new rules either. I was a lecturer for the University of Hawaii in business management for 14 years, and I always found case studies to be very instructive. As determined by the Fair Political Practices Commission, the FPPC, quote, in the matter of Luis Herrera, while serving as city librarian for the San Francisco Public Library, failed to report gifts received from the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library on annual statements of economic interest, Form 700 for calendar years 2009, 2010, and 2011. Mr. Herrera's original filing included this statement, which is at the bottom. Quote, I certify under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and correct, end quote. And you can all look down at your folders instead of looking at me. I don't blame you. And he signed it year after year after year saying he didn't get anything. And I brought it twice to the Ethics Commission, and both times they simply ignored it, which is why we went to the FPPC. Like the federal indictment of Mr. Nuru, nothing this body ever does improves the ethics. It always takes somebody from outside the City Hall family to do anything. Before proceeding to Sacramento, we brought this matter to the Ethics Commission, which did exactly nothing. As the best indicator of future performance is past performance, realistically, what can the public expect from this Ethics Commission? I've said it for more than a decade now to the previous commissioners and you. I'll say it again. Show me anything this Ethics Commission has done that has improved the ethics of this city. And again, they sit and look down into their laps. I don't blame you. You talk a good game. And there used to be a lot of people who would come here on a regular basis, and they no longer do because they realize that it really isn't worth the trouble. But don't worry, you have me. And I'll be back every month to point out the fact that, again, you're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. And the best definition of insanity, as Albert Einstein said, is the expectation that you do something for the 100th time that it will somehow turn out differently than the 99 times before.
Thank you. Any other public comment on agenda item 5? Okay. Agenda item number 6, discussion of monthly staff enforcement report.
Thank you, Chair Chu and Commissioners. This month's report highlights in brief what the the Commission is, of course, following with interest the revelations about potential public corruption in the city and county of San Francisco. These reports As the executive director highlighted in her budget report, many of those revelations have concerned former Public Works Director Mohammed Nuru. Her report, as mine, did not include anything about more recent revelations with respect to the office of the mayor. These materials were finalized ahead of those revelations, but I can assure you that the Enforcement Division continues to meet every week with its counterparts, its investigative counterparts in the offices of the controller, the city attorney, and the district attorney. As you know, the city attorney's office has established a public integrity hotline that people can contact if they have concerns or information related to public corruption. We would, of course, invite people to do the same, reminding people that we have a complaint process with the Ethics Commission as well. People can call us at the number that we've included in the report. We frequently get complaints over email. We have included the link to our website where the complaint process is described, and I would observe further that I have been working with Tyler Field, who has come previously before the commission. He is one of the members of the commission's EDA team, the Electronic Disclosure and Data Analysis team. The director of that team, Stephen Massey, has loaned Tyler to me, and the two of us are working together to develop an online complaint submission process to make it easier for the public. We have reviewed the online complaint submission processes available among many of our peer jurisdictions, and we are trying to take the better of the features of those various submission processes and incorporate them into a submission process that would serve the people of the city and county of San Francisco. So we hope to have that underway very soon. I would add, finally, as the report notes, that our division is certainly working with the Commission's policy division and counterparts elsewhere to try to identify any vulnerabilities in existing law with respect to government ethics. And we would hope that one outcome of the variety of revelations might be an opportunity for cross-departmental collaboration to shore up any of those vulnerabilities. A handful that come to mind arise in the arena of gifts, behested payments, and statements of incompatible activities. But we would intend to bring before the Commission at some future meeting a more explicit description of what our concerns might entail there. I would note that the list of accounts that have been referred to the Bureau of Delinquent Revenue has grown. I did receive a communication today from a member of the public who had a sensible request, which was that in subsequent meetings we report not only the status of these accounts, but the origin of the penalties that the Commission assessed against each of these debtors who are before the Bureau of Delinquent Revenue. I did go back and look through the origin of these particular penalties. I believe there are 14 individuals on this list. The vast majority of those, 9, I think, concern late fees assessed from the campaign finance context across a variety of committee types: general purpose, candidate committees, ballot measure committees, and major donors. The 5 remaining ones arose in the context of administrative enforcement. I would note one of Chris Jackson's accounts arose from an enforcement proceeding. The committee to elect Jacqueline Norman for supervisor arose from an administrative proceeding, a hearing on the merits, in which the Commission found 6 counts of failure to file semi-annual campaign statements. The account regarding Isabel Urbano was not a campaign finance late fee, but a lobbyist late fee. You will remember that the account regarding Lynette's Suite also arose after a hearing on the merits in the administrative enforcement context, and that account regards a candidate for the Board of Supervisors who received public financing, but whose record keeping was insufficient for the commission to have established her compliance with campaign finance laws. And then the fifth of these accounts, which is not from within the late fee context, is the one regarding Richard Matthews. And you may recall a stipulation that you ratified some months ago in which he agreed to three counts in violation of a prohibition against knowingly attempting to influence a governmental decision involving his own appointment for employment. So we have had a certain amount of conversation around the Bureau's efforts to collect these penalties, and we have had substantially less conversation about where the penalties arose to begin with. So I would just note that the request from the member of the public is well placed. I will probably just, excuse me, I will probably just field questions if you have any, but I would note again that at former Commissioner Kopp's request, we continue to report on a specific subset of statistics in the monthly enforcement report, and that appears at the top of this month in page 2, where we report average numbers regarding the two processes that govern the Commission's investigative process, the first being preliminary review, and the second, of course, being open investigation. So we report every month the number of cases in each of those categories and the average amount of time that it takes us to resolve in each step of that process. Reported for this month, the prior month, and this month a year ago. And I would just note again that about 2/3 of the matters before the Commission now are in open investigation instead of awaiting triage. The amount of time that it takes us to resolve investigations is holding around a year and a half. The amount of time that it takes us to triage complaints that come through the door is on a downward trend. It's less than 6 months. You'll recall last month that I stated some goals that the division retains. But I think I will just invite any questions if you have.
I just had one question, and that was regarding the online complaint submission tool. When you say it's about to get kicked off, is that the development process or turning it on and making it available to the public?
We hope to turn it on in the near future, but it's still in a developmental phase where we're creating some mock-ups. We'll do some testing. We may, when we turn it on, we may consider it a pilot because, of course, we would welcome feedback from users on whether the interface is serving their needs. So it's midway into the development.
Great. Well, keep us posted on the on that progress. Any other, Commissioner Lee?
I have a question regarding the online complaint. I assume they are done anonymously?
The online complaint process will include all of the options currently available to complainants, which is it's a strange matrix of possibilities. An individual can submit a complaint anonymously. We would consider that informal. Okay. But they could also submit the complaint with their contact information, but without attesting to its truth. Mm-hmm. We would consider that, again, an informal complaint, even though we might have their contact information, but it would, like the current complaint process, it would also enable people to submit a formal sworn complaint in which they provide their contact information and attest to the veracity of the information that they submit.
And also, since the whistleblower is going to be key to a lot of these complaints, if you haven't done so already, I would suggest putting along in the front of the page protections on the whistleblower, because it's taking a really, really bad hit the last few months. So I think that it would be good to provide confidence to those folks that what they're doing is protected under the law, so that they should feel confident in filling out those forms.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Public comment, thank you, Mr. Pierce, on agenda item number 6.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. I'd like to start out my public comment on this item with a joke. Quote, "The Enforcement Division is consulting internally with policy staff and others regarding any possible legislative or process changes that may be warranted to abate vulnerabilities in the city's existing ethics laws," end quote. It's a joke, right? What have you ever enforced? You go after the low-hanging fruit, people who try to run a campaign, get in over their head and can't afford a big fancy lawyer, while the big people like Nuru get away with bloody murder. As an annual salary benefits package of $164,000 a person, I would expect something a little bit disingenuous than what we've been presented with today. Author Rebecca Roife wrote in her book, The Ethics of Willful Ignorance, the following: "Much has been written on the notion of conscious avoidance or willful ignorance in criminal law. In brief, the criminal law doctrine dictates that someone who deliberately ignores obvious facts is as culpable as a person who knows those facts but continues despite them." As I did in the previous item, I showed you the case against former city librarian Luis Herrera, which I brought personally to the Ethics Commission on 2 separate occasions, and you did nothing. And we went to the FPPC in Sacramento. They found him guilty and fined him and forced him to restate those SEIs. You can have anybody fill out paperwork, but if you do nothing with the paperwork, especially when it's violated the law, do you really think these paper mache changes are really going to do anything? So where exactly does this put the Ethics Commission and its staff in relation to those public officials who file false SEIs? Haven't done anything as far as I have ever seen, and I don't see any indication that it'll be any different going forward. The greatest vulnerabilities in the city's ethics laws are the members of this commission, present and former. Civil grand jury said it really good. In regard to the Sunshine Ordinance, they say you don't enforce it, so they don't follow it. It's the same with the ethics laws.
Thank you. Any other public comment on agenda item number 6? Agenda item number 7, discussion of Executive Director's Report, an update of various programmatic and operational highlights of Ethics Commission staff activities since the Commission's previous monthly meeting.
Thank you, Chair Chu. The report that I provided to you this month provides some updates on a variety of programmatic fronts. First and foremost, a key milestone that our EDA team was able to achieve last month, which is to have all of the updated electronically filed Statement of Economic Interest data from over 500 filers fully now online from 2015 to 2019 in an open data format. And what that means is, in addition to the search function that we've been able to provide for an individual or a particular interest, this now enables the public to go in and pull down the entire or look at the entire data set across filers and across interests, so that it enables full transparency in ways that people want to look in the information and want to understand the information. So this is the kind of thing that we hope to continue to see going forward, but we were pleased that that was able to be concluded last month.
So, Director Pellin, let me just interject for a moment. So, as part of the budget submission for FY21, would go towards continuing this kind of work.
That's correct.
So, again, I just want to make the point that this is absolutely critical that we receive the resources to be able to take what were previously single PDFs that would be stored electronically, but effectively out of reach and unsearchable to anyone, because you'd have to go and look up one by one.
That's right.
By person or by entity, and it's literally an impossible task if you want to do that across 2015 through the present. So hats off to the EDA team for getting this done. I know this was contemplated, and it's great to see that it's alive and available.
And this is one example, I think, when you and members of the public have a chance to go look at the data, see what's there. This is exactly the kind of thing that we're have planned to do across program areas, because it is the place where people can go and look for the things that are of interest to them. So that's something that we will hope to see continuing across program areas at the Commission. We've been also initiating our annual filing outreach with Gayatri Taikandil's team. Our folks on the engagement and compliance staff have 4 sessions set up for next month. We know that Andrew Shen, the City Attorney's Office, has been doing helpful outreach to departments as well this filing season. We have sessions planned for filing officers, those officials in departments that administer these programs, so that their current paper filers can get them in on time. But we also do direct sessions for filers themselves, so that there are questions that they have about the process or why the rules are what they are and what the disclosure requirements might mean. They're intended to help provide that information to them. We also just updated our landing page on the website that you may have seen that directly links officials who need to file to the resources they need to do that filing. We also, I think I may have mentioned that we had applied for a San Francisco Fellows program resources. We have our San Francisco Fellows now underway, working with us for 40 hours on a project to develop some materials and content. And they've been a terrific bundle of energy and creativity and insight in our office. So we've really enjoyed working with them, but I wanted to highlight that they are underway, and we do look forward to bringing them to a commission meeting this spring, hopefully when their project is done, so they have a chance to meet with you directly. A couple of other quick highlights. The Board of Supervisors performance audit of the Ethics Commission that has been initiated by the Budget and Legislative Analyst is now underway. We've been meeting with and providing information to BLA auditors, and so that is ongoing and at this point anticipated to be completed sometime this spring, but that we will keep you posted on that. But that work is ongoing and a priority for us to support whatever information they may need from us. One last note here is that we did have, due to a scheduling conflict with the Commission, the December 2020 meeting date has been changed. Just as for the note for the public, I think we have updated this on our website. If we have not already, we will do that before the end of Monday, close of business. But it is, instead of Monday, it's been revised, to Monday, December 14th at 9:30 a.m. instead of Friday, December 11th. So again, that information is here just as for planning purposes. I think the only other thing I would add this month is that I want to acknowledge that last month, as the Commission elected new officers going forward effective March 1st per our bylaws, that would officially make this the last meeting of Chair Chu's in the capacity as chair. And I just simply, on the behalf of all of the staff, want to acknowledge your leadership over the last couple of years and in this role as chair for the Commission, and knowing what a challenging role it can be. We tap the chair always on the shoulder quite often, as we have historically done. And I just very much appreciate your steadiness and that you've been there to engage and to be very supportive with critical questions, insightful thinking, and assistance and direction at every step. So on behalf of all of the staff, I just did want to acknowledge for the record your leadership, and thank you for that, and for the continuity of operations that you've provided, apparently so seamlessly, but thank you.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure and a privilege to serve on this commission, and also to have the opportunity to work with you, Director Pelham, and your really talented staff on these important questions that are tough and impactful and challenging. So thank you for your really kind words. I appreciate them. Also don't want to leave out Deputy City Attorney Shen as well, and his support and advice. It's made my job really so much easier and really fun. So thank you for that. Call for public comments then on this agenda item number 7.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. While the Executive Director makes much of electronic filing and access to Form 700 filings through a searchable database, I truly believe it is much ado about nothing. In the case of former City Librarian Luis Herrera, the data was there, although I had to spend years digging for it, and the Ethics Commission chose to remain willfully blind. For many years, Mr. Herrera was the driving force that enabled the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library to run their scam on the public. While raising literally millions of dollars every year to support the library, less than 10% of what passes through their hands actually goes for that purpose. This chart shows in the years indicated, the Board of Supervisors passed an accept and expend agreement for the library in the amount of $750,000, although half of that approximately was restricted funding from other sources, and what actually came from the Friends was about $400,000 a year. And as you look at the last column, that didn't even make 10% of what they had in income in a given year. After initially lying on his SEIs, Mr. Herrera subsequently admitted to receiving $5,000 a year from this group, the Friends. The financial arrangement between the San Francisco Public Library and the Friends is legally questionable at best. When it was taken before the Board of Supervisors, they refused to approve it because the library was not getting enough. They took it before the Library Commission, and they have taken a hands-off. We have nothing to do with it. They haven't approved it either. What you basically have is a private arrangement between the city librarian and this group to raise money on behalf of the public library, and that agreement has not been certified or looked at by the city attorney's office. It's a fraud. Telling people that you're going to give money and we're going to use it to support the library and then it ends up going elsewhere is a fraud, pure and simple. Not approved by the Board of Supervisors, Library Commission, or the city attorney. Why is it allowed to continue? Because people like you turn a blind eye. Why do we have the department head of Public Works federally indicted? Because people like you turn a blind eye. Why do we have things like Mr. Herrera filing false statements of economic interest? Because people like you turn a blind eye. And now all of a sudden you've had this wonderful epiphany and things are going to change. I'm not going to hold my breath.
Any other public comment on agenda item number 7? Okay. Agenda number 8, discussion and possible action on items for future meetings. Commissioners? Public comment on agenda item number 8?
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. The members of this Ethics Commission, along with your staff, need to have an open, public discussion of the purposes for your existence. I've given you a number of cases throughout this afternoon to show that you basically don't enforce the law. You never have. You go after a few potential candidates for little misdemeanor type violations, and that's the extent of you, and the city government knows it. The city employees, the department heads know it. The civil grand jury knows it. I believe former Commissioner Quentin Kopp was accurate in his assessment of this Ethics Commission to this point. Statements of economic interest and other such devices are like locks. They're for honest people. I believe the question before you is a simple one. Will the members of this body waste the resources entrusted to you, or will you use those resources to move city government toward more ethical behavior? Some may look at this list and presume my motives to be nefarious. I assure you they are not. I have and will continue to use the Sunshine Ordinance for its intended purpose, to bring transparency to the operation of city government. The question is, will you? I can always sense the disapproval, because what people do on this commission is they look down in their laps and work on something else. And they never respond to any of my comments, because there is no response. The things I'm saying are facts. This Ethics Commission hasn't really done anything that I can experience, and I've said many times, give the public an example of something you've done that actually made this city more ethical. And what we get is silence, because there isn't anything. And no matter the fact that the mayor and the department head are on the headlines this week, next week it will sink below the waves, and like most of the scandals here in the city and county of San Francisco, it will disappear without notice. And it certainly will disappear without you doing anything to change the atmosphere. You are here, as I said at the beginning, to protect the interests of the City Hall family against the interests of the citizens of the city and county of San Francisco. And the simple fact that nobody bothers to come to your meetings anymore is a pretty good indication that even those willing to give you the benefit of the doubt have given up on you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Agenda item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding pending litigation, Yes on Prop B et al. Versus City and County of San Francisco, U.S. District Court, Northern District of California, case number 320 CV 00630, filed January 28, 2020. Call for public comment on this item.
Again, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. I always love it when you go into these closed sessions, because you go in there and you talk about stuff, and then you come out at the end and say, well, we're not going to tell anybody what we talked about. And I'll be honest with you, I don't trust you any further than I can see you. And when you go and close that door, I believe you probably have discussions about things which legally you're not supposed to be doing, because it's out of the sight of the view of the public. As I said earlier, you do everything behind closed doors. You formulate all the policies behind closed doors. You let in only those who agree with you, people who are willing to work with you to help improve things. But those people have all sort of gone by the way now. And you changed your meeting time so that members of the public won't even come anymore. Why? Because you don't want them here. You certainly don't want people like me pointing out the fact that you don't do anything. And what you do is simply shuffle papers. Boy, can I have a job with the Ethics Commission? I could use $164,000 a year to shuffle papers. I think most citizens of the city and county of San Francisco would be willing to do the job for $164,000 in pay and benefits. But the difference is, I think they would actually do something. Quentin Kopp had it right. This city knows you. And they know you like I know you, which is you're ineffective and are unlikely to ever be effective. You don't like hearing that, which is why last week you pushed the button and had the sheriff's deputies show up with their guns in their hand. Why? Because I spoke out of turn. Of course, when former Commissioner Kopp interrupted me during my public comment, you praised him. And when I took him to the task force and they found him in violation of the ordinance for having done that, you were silent. So I think you go to prove the adage, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You are corrupt.
Thank you. Any other public comment on agenda item number 9? I'd like to make a motion that the Ethics Commission assert attorney-client privilege and meet in closed session under Brown Act Section 54956.9A and Sunshine Ordinance Section 67.10D to discuss pending litigation.
Second.
Aye. Those against, motion's carried unanimously. Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television. SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
So today we are come together for a historic day. Today we gather to honor 50 years of Pride. Yes, 50 years. This anniversary was hard fought, from the days of the Freedom Parade to Compton's cafeteria riots to all the work across this country that we continue to do for our freedom. And if we look at this year alone, we remember that our theme of this year's Pride is generations of hope. And we look to the future because in the next 50 years, we have a lot to be hopeful for. We look at our past and we remember what we've accomplished, from marriage equality to celebrating that marvelous day here in this city hall when the first couple was married. We honor and recognize the protections of trans people and LGBT folks across the city, thanks to the leadership of the Board of Supervisors and all of our elected officials. We remember the work that we still have to do across the country as trans kids are being refused access to bathrooms in our schools. We remember the families that stand up for them, and we remember the work that we still have to do, because this generation is hopeful. This generation will continue to be hopeful. And there's so many reasons why we have this hope. Some of that comes from our elected officials, some of that comes from our own journeys, but we know we cannot do this work without the leadership in our city. And I am so proud to work for a leader in this amazing city who's not only spearheaded the work of so many of us and supported so much of LGBT equality here in San Francisco, but it also is continuing that effort forward. Our mayor, Mayor London Breed.
First of all, thank you, Claire. Thank you to the official band of San Francisco, the Lesbian Gay Freedom Band. Thank you to SF Pride, and thank you to Supervisor Mandelman and so many elected leaders and department heads here in San Francisco to celebrate the beginning of Pride in San Francisco, 50 years of what I think has been an amazing accomplishment. So thank you to the board members, to the president, Carolyn. Thank you to our new executive director. Like, so many great things are happening in this city, and so many great things are happening with Pride. And I know I get really excited because even though it's February and we are not expected to have a number of activities, especially the parade, until June, it's going to be so exciting that we had to announce it right now. We had to get everybody excited about what's to come, because there is nothing that we do better than celebrate in San Francisco. We celebrate our history, we celebrate our diversity, we celebrate what makes San Francisco so unique. And we know that in this city was the epic center of what has occurred that has led to so much to support our LGBT community. And I'm really proud to be in a position as mayor to help support and carry on some of the many policies that we know are necessary to continue to make sure that there is hope for future generations. In fact, Trans Home SF has been an amazing accomplishment in this city, and thank you, Tony Newman, for your leadership. We got one of our first buildings, and there's more to come, along with wraparound supportive services for our trans seniors. We know this work is critical. And in San Francisco, we do celebrate a record low of new HIV infections, less than 200 last year. And thank you, Dr. Grant Colfax, for your leadership with the Department of Public Health. We will continue to make sure that we make those investments to get to zero. We just acquired a new building that will help transitional age youth, and we know that we did the count around homeless youth. About 50% of the youth that are homeless in this city identify as LGBT, and we want to make sure that we're doing more to help the next generation of young people growing up in this community so that they truly have hope. So many great things, but also so much more work to do. And I am really confident in the leadership of this city to really help us move forward on so many different levels. As we think about just the attacks that we have been under, I mean, we just had a visit from the other number 45 here this weekend, and I can't help but think about not only our city being under attack, but also our LGBT community, where we continue to fight for things that we shouldn't have to at this point. You know, when I think about just what we're celebrating in the month of February, Black History Month. Black history is American history. We're celebrating Lunar New Year. Chinese American history is American history. LGBT history is American history. We are all a part of the fabric of what makes our city and our country so great. So we will not be silenced. We will continue to lift our voices and celebrate what makes us so great, what makes us so unique. And during the month of Pride, we will just do it with that much more flair. So thank you all so much for being here. 50 years, here's to 50 more incredible years in the future for future generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Breed. And one other note I'm just so proud of, thanks to the mayor's leadership, we've invested recently over $1 million over the next year into trans seniors. So thank you to the Department of Aging and Adult Service, Shireen, and all the leadership of our city to make sure those that brought us to this 50 years continue to be celebrated and can continue to thrive in place. So now I'd like to introduce a leader who we know will continue to take Pride forward in the next 50 years, our new Director of Pride, Fred Lopez. Welcome, Fred.
Hi, good morning, everybody. How are you? Good. Excited? SF Pride, hashtag SF Pride 50. Thank you all so much for coming to San Francisco Pride's 50th anniversary kickoff announcement. Before anything else, I just want to convey our sincerest gratitude to the mayor, to Supervisor Mandelman, and all these amazing elected officials up here for coming out today to start the celebration right. Every city department that is present, we want to thank you for your unwavering support for San Francisco's largest annual outdoor event. It may cost over $3 million to produce, but it wouldn't happen at all without the amazing coordination of this many departments, institutions, sponsors, and of course our community members, partners, and volunteers.
Yay to the volunteers.
Right? Yeah, exactly. As Claire said, the theme for San Francisco Pride this year, Pride 50, is Generations of Hope. And it's the culmination of a 3-year theme of generations that was originally suggested by Pride member Larry Nelson. That spirit of hope will become visible at the beginning of June when the rainbow flags go up along Market Street. Much of Market Street now newly car-free, right? On Saturday, June 27th, Civic Center will once again become a site of celebration, home to more than 20 community programs, stages, and venues, all weekend, with crowds in the tens of thousands we're expecting. It's going to be a big year. We're excited for it. Then, as Claire also mentioned, for many of us, what is the centerpiece of Pride, the parade and march steps off at 10:30 a.m. on Sunday, June 28th. As is tradition, the Dykes on Bikes will roar and be super loud and visible, and they'll lead the parade's more than 275 contingents from the Embarcadero to Civic Center, with 50,000 marchers expected to be in the parade, all cheered on by more than 100,000 spectators. It's going to be quite a spectacle this year. If your organization or group is thinking about marching, we encourage you to register soon, because we think the parade might run out of space earlier than it has in the years past. So that's great. For the past 2 years, our media partners at CBS Bay Area have live streamed the parade so that people from around the world can see the spectacle that is San Francisco Pride. This year, we're delighted to announce that in addition to the usual live stream, KPIX will broadcast the parade live on Sunday, June 28th. So wear something cute and call your moms, because you're going to be on TV. That's exciting. Thank you to our friends at KPIX. That's not the only new development for 2020. On April 17th, an exhibition entitled Labor of Love, The Birth of San Francisco Pride, 1970 to 1980, opens at the GLBT History Museum in the Castro. It's a collaboration between Pride and the GLBT Historical Society, and it'll be up in the museum until January 2021. Further, starting May 7th, right here in City Hall in the North Light Court, the Historical Society and San Francisco Arts Commission will mount a photography exhibition called 50 Years of Pride. So make sure to come to City Hall and check out the amazing history that we can learn from. Our entire team at San Francisco Pride is working hard to ensure that we are ready for this monumental event. And here are some ways in which our communities can help. Applications are now open for Pride's community partners who provide the invaluable volunteer power during Pride weekend. And the public has until March 10th to vote for this year's individual and organizational community grand marshals at sfpride.org. I want to acknowledge that in this room there are some former community grand marshals and honorees, like our board president, Carolyn, was once an honoree, and there's some others. So if you want to raise your hand to folks who have been honored in the past. Thank you for all of your tireless work. That spirit of tireless volunteerism and service is at the core of San Francisco Pride, and that commitment goes both ways. In 2019, we were pleased to donate more than $203,000 to over 40 Bay Area nonprofits, which adds to our ongoing total of more than $3 million since 1997. Finally, 2020 may be the 50th anniversary of San Francisco Pride as a march and a demonstration and a celebration, but San Francisco's LGBTQ history began well before 1970 and what was then called Gay Freedom Day. The Compton's cafeteria riot took place in August 1966, as we know, almost 3 years before Stonewall, and the city has always been a pioneer in equal rights legislation and public health programming battling HIV and AIDS. As we look forward to the next 50 years, let's always remember the valiant struggles of previous generations, people who fought to get us here and never lost hope. As Harvey Milk said, you gotta give them hope. And with your support here at San Francisco Pride, we always will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fred. We're so excited, and we know that Pride is in great hands. Thank you. So now it's my honor to introduce our new Pride Board Chair, Carolyn Weisinger.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Mayor Breed. Thank you to all you that are joining us here today, especially my aunts who threaten me bodily harm if I don't mention them. It's my honor to be your Pride 50 Board President. And as Fred mentioned, the board is excited about completing our 3-year theme with this year's Generations of Hope. While we're excited about the events leading up to the Pride weekend, we are most excited about what that word hope represents. As a community, we are in challenging times, and Pride is no different. I like to say that being around 50 years represents the fact that there is more that is required of us. not just as a board, but supporting agencies, supporting organizations, and supporting officials. There is more required now that we are headed into 50. The organizational needs aren't the same as they were in 1970, and neither are the needs of the community that we represent. There is more required in the way that we represent community, there is more required in the way that we support our community, and there is more required in the way that we are supported. Now, the last leg to 50 is always the hardest leg. Some of you may have been married 50 years and you know it's hard getting to 50. It doesn't get easier as we march in these last months to 50. As someone who grew up in a church that's now 75 years old, I remember 1995 and how hard that last road to 50 was. I remember the struggle, I remember the squabbles, and I remember the days that it seemed like it would all fall apart. We are in that crunch time now, but we as a board continue to believe in the importance of having a celebration that is reflective of the community that we serve, is reflective of all of their voices, and we try to do our hardest to make visible all of those voices. Now, Fred did mention when Supervisor Harvey Milk said that we have to give them hope, but like I said, my board knows that I don't make any decision without first referring to the church. And I remember when Bishop Carlton Pearson said we have to remind them of the hope. So that's what we seek to do this year at Pride 50, and we look forward to you joining us for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So 2020 is kind of an incredible year, right? Not only is it the 50th anniversary, but also we need to get out the vote. And every one of you matters, so let's remember to get out there and do that. So now it's my honor to introduce our only out gay supervisor, who has been doing some incredible work, not only in his district, but for the LGBT community at large and San Francisco at large. Please welcome Supervisor Raphael Mandelman.
Good morning, everybody. It does, February does feel like a slightly odd time to be celebrating Pride, but I will say there's never a bad opportunity for the queer community to take the mayor's balcony. So we are happy to be here. And Madam Mayor, I think it is just worth noting the extraordinary collection of queer department heads you have, from Claire Farley at OTI to Janine Nicholson at the Fire Department, and Grant Colfax, the Department of Public Health, and Jeffrey Tumlin, my constituent over there at MTA, and Shireen McSpadden at Aging and Adult Services. And I know I'm leaving off a whole ton of people, but you have a very queer administration, and we are quite appreciative of that. The trustees never get acknowledged, so I'm going to acknowledge them now. We have our past president, Alex Randolph of the College Board, and our current vice president, Tom Temprano of the College Board, doing great and important work. And then I also do want to congratulate Fred Lopez. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you to the whole board. Pride has never been easy, but it is important. And so this year is particularly important and seems to be particularly challenging, and I know you will get through it, and we are grateful for what you are doing to get us through what will be a fantastic, amazing 50-year celebration. So thank you. I was trying to think earlier today about, for that 1970 Gay In, the people who participated in that, what would they have imagined the next 50 years would be like? And, would they have imagined that in just a few years a gay man would get elected as supervisor in San Francisco? And would they imagine that over the decades after that, rainbow wave after rainbow wave would come crashing throughout the land until this last 2018 election, when we got an unprecedented number of gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender folks elected, even in places like Virginia? That is extraordinary. They would not have imagined that AIDS and HIV were coming, but and nor would they have imagined the extraordinary community response that would come to it. This is an extraordinarily queer day. Tom and I were just over at the airport where the quilt is getting brought from Atlanta and is finally coming home, and there's going to be a fantastic rollout of panels from the last 10 years in Golden Gate Park on April 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and everybody should come. But the resilience of the queer community in responding to that crisis and building a civil rights movement, you know, they would have had no idea. And would they have imagined same-sex marriage? Would they, you know, however you feel about Pete Buttigieg, would they have imagined that a gay man would be one of the leading candidates for president in this year? Would they imagine that we would have corporate CEOs, and that so much of what they probably wouldn't have imagined would come to pass? So it has been an extraordinary 50 years. I don't imagine that they would have imagined that the mayor of San Francisco would be an African-American woman who grew up in the projects. And I do think that they would be particularly amazed and delighted at that prospect, because Harvey Milk talked about the us's and the coalition of folks who had been left out of the power structure before the 70s, and who just in the 70s were beginning to imagine that there might be a universe where they could take power. And so it is pretty amazing with our queer department heads and our African-American woman mayor. San Francisco is living up to the dreams of 50 years ago, I think. You know, Generations of Hope is an amazingly appropriate way of viewing this year, and I feel like I generationally have benefited so much. And in a lot of ways, the work now is about building, acknowledging the institutions like the Lesbian Gay Freedom Band, which our mayor did last year. And well, we did, and then she signed, then I got a pen out of it. But you know, that was a great moment for the city. But some of the other fantastic moments, getting that second building at open house, and now having purchased a third potential site for LGBT affirming senior housing. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for that. You know, there's just around the corner from there, the Gay Men's Chorus, another 70s cultural institution, has bought a building and is becoming the National LGBTQ Center for the Arts, and we got some help for them into the budget last year. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, thank you to my colleagues on the board. We have inherited so much, and so going forward, I think, you know, obviously the obligation is to build on that, and also to recognize the unfulfilled promises. In 1970, they knew that trans folks had been left behind, and in 2020, we know that trans folks have been left behind, and so we need to build on our Trans Home SF and do many more times that, and we need to eradicate the epidemic. We need to finally do the work of getting to zero, and to do that, we have to go into communities of color and reach folks who have not been reached, and that's how that's going to work. And so the work of justice, which they knew we needed to do in 1970 and 80 and 90, and since we really have to do now, and that is the work of the next 50 years. So it's exciting. I'm excited to be part of this. Thank you. I think now Fred Lopez is going to come back.
That's a great way to sort of summarize all the amazing things that are happening in San Francisco. We are so incredibly fortunate to live in this amazing place and being supported by all of these people and all of these institutions that surround us. I do want to say really quickly that I want to make sure that I acknowledge the board members from San Francisco Pride who are here. Give us a wave. And San Francisco Pride wouldn't happen without, obviously, the hundreds of volunteers, as well as a really talented team of contractors and staff. If you're on contractor or staff team, give us a wave. Great work. Finally, as Raphael said, you know, it is a little early. Usually we have a lot of things to say about all the amazing talent and entertainment and speakers that we're going to have on our stages. We don't have all that settled just yet, but we're working hard every day to make sure that that stuff is coming along. And so stay tuned. Visit our website at sfpride.org to learn more. And if you want to get involved, feel free to send us an email, find our newsletter, sign up on the website. But honestly, we're just here to say that we're excited. We're working hard to make sure that Pride 50 is going to be a spectacle that won't be forgotten soon. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming and hand it back to the Lesbian and Gay Freedom Band to send us out for the morning. Thank you again.
I love teaching. I really, it's such an exhilarating experience when people begin to feel their own creativity.
It really is a place where all people can, at any level, come and take a class and feel part of the community. And I think it's very enriching as an artist. There are a lot of folks that actually take black and white classes and actually take their digital imagery and turn them into negatives and actually print them in a traditional sense.
There just aren't that many black and white darkrooms available anymore, so that's a really big draw.
It is basically our sort of our signature piece, the largest and last standing community darkroom in the U.S.
There are still a lot of people who want to actually get into, smell that fix, and get into that darkroom.
I think it's the heart of this place. You feel it when you come in. I know I felt it when I first got here.
You will see people who've been taking photographs for 30 years and people who just started taking pictures. And so this place is really an intersection for many generations of photographers. And that's a great place to learn in that sense because you meet people from different areas of photography. And also everyone who works here is a working photographer. We really get to build the photographic community here at Harvey Milk Photo Center. This photo center is different. Well, first of all, it's a great location. It's right there in the middle of a densely populated area, and so people can just walk here.
And a lot of people come here just so that they can participate in this photographic community. It's a great opportunity for people who have a little bit of photographic experience or just want to learn it, and on the people who have a lot to really come together and share, a love and a passion.
We offer everything from traditional black and white darkroom to learning how to process your first roll of film. We offer classes and workshops in digital, be that camera or digital printing. We offer classes basically in location shooting, Ocean Beach, Chinatown at night, Treasure Island. So there's a vast array of programs really for anyone who wants to spend a day, a half a day, or a 4-week or 5-week program.
Hi, my name is Aldo. Hi, my name is Imori. Jennifer. Lucia. Mateo. Hi, my name is Carly. Ella. Andrew. Hi, my name is Simone, but I'm called Mo. We're going on a field trip to take pictures up the hill.
Come on, come on, come on.
Actually, been here a lot. Not a lot, but I live near here. And I've never looked closely enough to see everything so coolly. And now I get to take pictures of them.
Most of these kids have point-and-shoot cameras, but we want to try to get them to be more creative with it. So we allow them to be free with them, but at the same time, we give them a little bit of direction.
See that? So you see how it's focusing here?
Oh, Shmo, that was cool.
Focus in here, and then all back there is detail. You see that? Okay, so that's what you need to do there.
See the hills behind? Okay. Behind the city, behind the houses? How about behind those hills? You see any more hills?
Look it. I saw 2 scores, maybe.
These kids are wonderful.
Oh my God, you took the long way.
They get to explore, they get to see different things. All right, let's go this way.
Who wants to stay up here? I do.
Come on, let's go. We let them explore a little bit, and then we came back down, and then they take their pictures, and they look at them, and they give me their best.
You did 5 already? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good.
When they get home, and if their parents ever ask them, say, hey, what did you learn? They can say, oh, well, I learned the rule of thirds or the depth of field, or I learned that, these shadows can give a good contrast. I mean, some of the things that they come up with is fantastic. it blows me away. And so that's what we're trying to encourage, that these kids can bring out their creativity and also their love for photography.
A lot of people come into my classes and they don't feel like they really are creative, and through the process of working and showing them, giving them some tips and ideas, they really begin to be proud of themselves.
It is kind of the best kept secret in San Francisco. I think you should call us and come in and take a class. At least come in on a Saturday. We have open house on Saturdays. We have orientations on most Saturdays. It's a really wonderful location, and I think it's a real jewel to the community.
Ready to develop your photography skills? The Harvey Milk Photo Center focuses on adult classes most weeknight evenings, and Saturday workshops expose youth and adults to photography walks. Point and click your browser to harveymilkphotocenter.org to learn more. And until next time, don't forget to get out and play. SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
First of all, hi everybody. I'm Mayor London Breed, and I'm really excited to welcome you all here to City Hall. I'm a city kid. I grew up in San Francisco, and I went to public schools. In fact, I went to Galileo High School. Was always jealous of how smart the Lowell High School students were. But the fact is, I take a lot of pride in the accomplishments of young people in this city, because I know how hard it is to work to get to where you have gotten to in order to win a state championship. It is an absolute incredible accomplishment. Don't correct my grammar, because I went to Galileo High School. I know you guys go to Lowell. But the fact is, you did it playing sports and also keeping your grades up and staying focused and doing it as a team. It matters, and you are going to look back on this time in your life and you're going to think, wow, that was the best time of my life. So it may not seem that way right now, but a few years from now, you're going to look back and you're going to really remember your teammates. You're going to remember the excitement while you played. You're going to remember, all the incredible good times that you've experienced. And yes, the challenges to get to this place, because we know that it takes a lot of hard work, both physically and mentally, to get to a place where you can win a state championship. And I wanted you all to know how proud we are here in San Francisco that these incredible women that are sitting before me today achieved this incredible milestone. So I wanted to take the opportunity to honor you here at City Hall because I'm really proud of each and every one of you for everything that you've been able to do. It means a lot, and I want to take this opportunity.
Do I need to gavel back in? Okay, all right. Okay. The Ethics Commission is back in open session, and I'd like to make a motion not to disclose our closed session deliberations regarding the pending litigation.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion was carried unanimously. Agenda item number 10, additional opportunity for public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda pursuant to Ethics Commission Bylaws, Article 7, Section 2. Okay, there's no public comment. Move to adjourn. Okay. Thank you.